Looking back and thinking that it's been 10 years and some change since Awaken the Fallen was released, it really blows my mind to see where we're at now, knowing that that's really the album that defined our sound.
That was a record that we needed. There was a lot of strong melodies, a lot of interesting arrangements, just some cool ideas.
Through it all, we have these great fans that have been with us since day one. Their passion for this band has only helped it grow to other people who see that passion.
Awakening the Fallen really started to perpetuate that Avenged cult following. It was the very beginning of that big, underground, psychotic fan base.
Waking is Avenged Sevenfold. In the early days, me and Matt put all of our time and effort into sending our demos to every label in the world. Every punk label you can imagine, every hardcore label. We'd look at the back of 7-inch records and be like, some obscure label and be like, let's send them a demo and see if we can get signed.
At the time, we signed with a Belgian label called Good Life, and we were just happy to be on a label.
They really liked what we were doing. They wrote us like a paragraph contract.
With a one-page contract that said basically, you know, we'll pay for sounding the 7th trumpet.
Naturally, we printed it out and signed it without even reading it or showing it to anybody.
I remember they gave us like $2,500 to record that record, and we needed like $2,500 more to use Donnell Cameron. So we got jobs, and I worked for my grandfather, and Zach worked serving coffee.
It got us off our ass. It put us in West Beach studio, which had recorded some of our favorite albums. Offspring's Smash was there, No Effects albums, Bad Religion, Pennywise albums. So just being in there was like legendary for us.
As soon as the record came out, we had a pretty cool following. I think it was a lot of our family and friends that were just kind of coming to support us, but we were doing pretty well. So with that, we got management because our manager, Larry Jacobson, said he loved To End the Rapture, which is the first song on Sounding the 7th Trumpet, and saw potential in us. We didn't want a manager because Rancid didn't have a manager, and some bands we looked up to didn't have managers, but he convinced us it would be a good thing.
We were in the van touring for Sounding the 7th Trumpet, touring everywhere with any band we could possibly open for, playing every city in front of just about nobody.
You know when your band is almost there, when there's always those people in your band that aren't really quite as dedicated, they don't really care as much as you do about it.
Matt was really great about the vision of where he wanted Avenged to go at that point, as was Zachy as well.
We had started out a group of friends. Sin and Jimmy had Pinkly Smooth, their side project band.
And I knew from day one, me, Jimmy, and Zach were for life, and when we got Gates in the band, we'd already put a record out.
Yeah, that was, for me, the beginning of Avenged Sevenfold. That was my genesis.
Sin had joined the band permanently after hearing Sounding the 7th Trumpet and wanting to be a part of it, hang out with his friends, have a band that was willing to tour and record, that was appealing to him.
It has the coolest memories for me because I was welcomed into this band as a writer for the first time. I didn't come in just as a musician. Matt specifically said, I hear you're writing a lot for Pinkly Smooth. Just kind of left it at that. And I was like, I wonder what that means.
He was into it, and we were all friends, so I think he was going to do it because we're friends, and why would you quit on your friends?
At that point, it was me and Matt kind of scouring the internet looking for anybody in Orange County that could play bass.
Before my time, there's a friend of ours, Matt Wendt. I believe he was the first bassist in Avenged.
Matt Wendt, who started the band with us, he wanted to go to college and do other things. We had some other bass players in between there that never made it onto records, but Justin Sane had some issues.
It's funny, we're kind of like the Spinal Tap, but of bassists. Couldn't seem to quite get it right. All great guys, but some of them had different aspirations. And then we got our fearless leader, Johnny Christ, the immeasurable Johnny Christ.
The way I came into the band, I'd been kind of bugging them by knocking on the garage door where they were rehearsing before.
We lucked out because we would have practices at Matt's parents' house in his garage, and Johnny would come waltzing down the street, smoking cigarettes. He must have been 4 years old at the time, and walk up and be like, yeah, this sounds cool. And he would pick up the bass and start jamming Primus songs with Jimmy in the open garage. And we're like, dude, just shut the fucking garage. Like, we're gonna get the police called on us.
You know, they were definitely trying to get work done, and I was, you know, kind of bothersome.
But when Johnny was always kind of hanging around, you know, he's a little younger than us, but, you know, he just fit in attitude-wise with Jimmy and with Brian especially, and they would have a lot of fun. So when we finally needed somebody, and we called little Johnny Seward.
It was the last tour for Setting the Seventh Trumpet before they went in to write a new record.
We called up Johnny, we're like, hey, we got a show in like 4 days, a Showcase Theater, it's gonna be sold out. Will you play?
Obviously that's something I really wanted to do. Playing bass since I was 12 years old and really enjoy music, so the opportunity came up and I was like, well, you know, at least it'd be fun for me.
So he quit high school, didn't have to ask him twice, dropped out of high school, fucking came over to my house, I showed him how to play a few of the songs. He was ready to go, played his first show, jumped in the tour van with us, never looked back.
And I just said, fuck this. I didn't want to deal with it.
You leave high school because you're selling out Showcase Theater. It's like, what is that, 400 kids? It's like, who would have known it would have got to this point?
It's funny to say now, because at the time I was just so sure of it. Now I'm looking back, I'm like, man, I was kind of a weird kid, you know? Like there was no guarantee that this was going anywhere, you know? Hadn't even done Waking the Fallen yet, you know? It was Sounding the Seventh Trumpet, you know? It's kind of funny, we're still touring in a van. You just give it all up, you know?
At that point, that was, you know, that was the lineup.
It was a good lineup and we were ready to take on the world. And you know, you get out there with a bunch of guys in a van and you're on tour together and you go through all these life experiences. It's one of those things where you just know when it gels. We all want to do this forever. We don't care what anyone says, let's do it. So we were all on the same page and that was a cool feeling.
It was probably the best bonding experience you could ever imagine for several years, and just worked out perfectly.
When we first started embarking upon our long journey of Waking the Fallen and the next transition of Avenged Sevenfold, it was a pretty wild and haphazard time.
Touring then was a little different, you know, and it definitely toughened us up for the road.
We weren't just waiting to get a show at Chain Reaction or Showcase Theater within our area. We were jumping in the van or jumping in our cars and playing in, you know, Santa Barbara, playing in San Diego, playing everywhere. If we could play in front of 20 or 30 kids, it was huge for us. Hopeless Records took note of us. I mean, they saw us on flyers. We were playing every show that we could.
Well, Hopeless Records came around and they were interested in buying the rights to Sounding the Seventh Trumpet and putting out our next record, which would be Waking the Fallen.
And they came out and saw us, and Lewis, the owner of Hopeless Records, really liked what we were doing. I think he saw that there's a punk rock element, and I think he liked the fact that we had screaming elements. He definitely saw something in us at a time when other people didn't know what we were doing. And for that, I'm really appreciative.
Everybody was really excited about what we were doing, and in turn excited us.
You get with Hopeless and it's like, you know, it's a legitimate independent label that's gonna help put some money into the band, really help the distribution and everything, really help that record take off.
No disrespect to Good Life Recordings, but being on a label that was in Belgium was a lot different than being on a label that was in LA, where you could actually work on things together, get a record going. So it was just always really artist friendly, you know, it was great.
As far as when Waking the Fallen was getting worked out, I just remember we were still writing in Matt's parents' garage.
We were constantly going. We weren't even thinking about our next album. We were just trying to come up with songs, because at that point we're playing the same 11, 12 songs every single night.
Everybody was still at the peak of going crazy and partying.
And we were just all over the place. I don't even know how we constructed songs at that time. We just sat there and put all these things into a blender, and that was the Avenged Sevenfold sound.
When you walked in, you wrote anything at any time, so it was ultimately fearless. And I think we've remained true to that, but there has been a stronger sense of what Avenged Sevenfold is and what Avenged Sevenfold sounds like. But then it was just haphazard chaos.
It was a fun dynamic we had.
Waking the Fallen was probably my favorite to write because there was just no thought, no care in the world. It just allowed for this breeding ground of creativity from us that was uninhibited.
Our sound developed kind of organically because of where we live, Southern California. You know, there was a big punk scene.
We were heavily influenced by punk rock, thrash, metal.
You would have seen us at Warped Tour and you would have seen us at Ozfest as fans. That's just how we rolled.
And at the time, when we were getting excited to write songs, which ended up being Waking the Fallen, we were listening to tons of Pantera and really, loving Dime's solos and the riffs. And we were listening to the Master of Puppets from Metallica.
Sepultura and Pantera and Slayer and Megadeth, but we were also big fans of Bad Religion and NoFX and the Misfits and Dead Kennedys and all the punk rock stuff. A lot of hardcore stuff.
We had two intentions. We wanted to be the heaviest and most melodic band at that time.
I mean, that was where our heart and minds were at as far as wanting to write songs.
We didn't want to be pigeonholed. Matt started singing more. He's got a great voice, and we didn't want to always rely on hardcore breakdowns with screams and everything like that. That's still definitely prominent on Waking the Fallen, but it was a transitional period.
That's really when I think that we came into our modern sound. I think that's when Matt's voice really lent itself to being heard in the way that is Avenged Sevenfold.
It was very progressive. It had still its hardcore roots, but it just was surprisingly so melodic.
And when we finally had enough music written and laid it all down and heard demos and stuff, we realized we might have something here. These songs are really cool. There's a lot of intricate parts. We're really expanding on what we did with Sounding the Seventh Trumpet, trying new things. So we felt really good about it.
Having that kind of foundation gave us a lot of leeway and a strong direction and sense of identity of exactly where we wanted to go.
There was a lot of strong melodies, a lot of interesting arrangements, just some cool ideas, especially for some young kids that are 20 years old and younger.
We didn't really know what we were onto. I know that we always had a grandiose vision of wanting to be big, but we didn't really have any idea what we were doing at the time.
Waking the Fallen was the first record where we utilized a producer. With the help of Larry, our manager, always guiding us, he knows the right support team that we need to be with.
We had met our manager at that point and had a record label that was willing to actually pay for a recording. And at that time for us, that was huge. I mean, the budget was probably really, really small, but they put us in with an actual producer.
A feisty young Bostonian by the name of Mudrock.
And he heard our Second Heartbeat demo and thought what we were doing was really cool.
He really helped with that record, along with his cohort, Fred Archambault, who is just a fucking legend. That guy is just one of the most special human beings in the world. And we're still great friends.
For us, it was really hard because we'd never really worked with a producer. And he was trying to harness the energy and kind of make it more focused. So there's a little bit of a struggle there with me, because obviously I grew up punk rock. I wanted everything to be raw and way too fast or way too slow, and I didn't understand the concept of guitars being in tune or timing or tempo, nor did the Rev. I mean, being one of the best drummers I've ever played with, he plays with absolute reckless abandon. He would go fast, he would go slow, his fills would be too all over the place.
He really taught us what it means to not, his words, meander and be masturbatory, which means get your head out of your ass and write songs that aren't just for your own guilty pleasure.
He definitely smacked us into reality, we needed somebody to question the lyrics, we needed somebody to sit there and tell us when the vocal take wasn't good. We needed Jimmy to not overplay. We needed him to write the right drum parts for the songs. We needed everything to be spaced out and really thought out and how we were going to record this thing.
Open to that door because you'll hear the worst thing you've ever heard.
What's the worst you've ever heard?
What's going on in that room?
Let's go check it out.
That was the only record that I think I really had a lot of trouble with. It was the first time I was ever in a real studio doing stuff. It was something that, as a kid, I never even thought of. I thought of, you play in the garage, you play some punk songs, you play around, you just have fun with it. You're not thinking about anything else like that.
I remember all of us just just getting our ass kicked in there. You know, it was really learning how things really work. You know, I remember Johnny sitting there with Fred for hours.
Me and Fred just sat in the B studio room, making sure I knew the parts very well, working on my own bass lines while we were demoing out the songs and everything like that.
Johnny became such a great bass player from working with Fred, and Brian just working on his solos for forever. And I remember Brian was even more picky than Mudrock was, because Mudrock a lot of times would say something's good, or Fred would say something's good, and Brian just do it over and over and over.
We definitely learned, you know, an invaluable amount of information from the both of them, and we quickly applied it to the next record.
By City of Evil time, we were running Pro Tools at my house, and we were making demos by ourselves and doing all the pre-production ourselves. So we learned quick, but we definitely needed somebody to teach us, and that was Mudrock and Fred.
Once Waking was released, I remember taking the final mixes home and listening to it and really feeling truly proud of the songs. And it was the first time that people that were the closest to me listened to it and kind of had the look on their face like, well, maybe these guys are onto something.
It was taking this subgenre of music to newer heights.
When we were doing Waking Fallen, there was no word of mouth via the internet. There was no YouTube. There was no Google searching bands. It was handing out flyers. It was playing the breakfast slot at Warped Tour and then standing around the sun for the next 10 hours, handing out demos and flyers before you had to pack up your gear and then drive yourself to the next middle of nowhere city.
I gotta say, we were one of the first bands on Warped Tour, for better or for worse, that was a band that screamed and was heavy and had those metal, those hardcore tendencies.
And people are like, what the fuck is this? This isn't pop punk, this isn't ska, this isn't punk rock. What are these guys doing?
There was a buzz going around, like, who are these guys? You know, how are they on Warped Tour when this is a punk tour and they're not really a punk band? I think that helped us get a lot of attention at that time and really helped kick off Waking Fallen.
It started that whole scene, and it created awareness to that on a bigger level, on a more grand scale.
Now you look at Warped Tour and it's hard to imagine a tour without all that. You know, there's a lot of bands that are on there doing that.
At that point, you know, you're playing in front of thousands of people and doing what you set out to do, and it's like a dream come true.
It was a real way to see the steady growth of the band, actually be able to visualize it and to see the progression, the stages getting bigger, the crowds getting bigger and everything like that.
We have a reason to jump back in the van and go starve ourselves on the road and drive around the country over and over again. And by the time we made our way back home, we had realized that we had went from a band that had 100 fans to a band that maybe had 1,000 fans. And we started noticing people sending us letters and saying, I love what you guys are doing. I got your death bat tattooed on me. And me and Matt would talk to each other like, holy shit, this girl got a death bat tattooed.
Probably like 4 months of touring up until that point when we were going around and we started noticing more and more kids with the tattoos and just waiting outside clubs all day long. It's like, wow, these people really care about what we're doing.
We came back and we had sold out the Henry Fonda Theater in Hollywood.
Which was a really big deal for us at the time to be able to sell that out.
That was huge for us. And we were filming our music video for Unholy Confessions.
You know, a show like that was like the biggest thing we'd been involved in, and it's so funny to think about now. I mean, now we're looking at, God, this summer and all these European festivals, but I mean, we were scared, not scared, but just like, it's your biggest show, and you know you're shooting a video and you want everyone to be pumped.
How the fuck are you guys doing tonight, Ventura? Thank you so much for coming out tonight. You guys have been amazing so far. We are Van Sutherland from Orange County, California. We just did a video for this next song. It'll be out soon. This song's called Unholy Confessions. It's the first track I'm playing around with.
that we have always had from the early days is integrity with what we do, from the artwork to the songs that we write to the music videos.
Because of the success of Waking the Fallen and then signing a deal with Warner Brothers, part of the deal was like, hey, will you help us make a video for Unholy Confessions? Because when Waking the Fallen was out, we didn't have a budget for a video or even think about making a video.
Unholy Confessions was becoming a popular song that we were playing live. So we did one video first that we weren't happy with, so we scrapped.
And at the time, it was almost like the record label couldn't believe that they had paid for a video, and we said, we're not putting this out.
We used a director that we really respected, and we still do. It just, the video wasn't right for us.
It was a great video too. Thomas Mignoni did it. Talented guy. I think we just didn't have a budget to execute the vision, and it felt that way. So we didn't do it.
And I think a lot of bands, you know, they feel like they spent the money, they have the video. If they don't love it in their heart, they still put it out. And it's just not the right thing to do. The right thing for us to do was go back, film the right video, which is the Unholy Confessions video that was released.
We just said, why are we trying to make a video of something when we could just show one of these live shows and show all these fanatical fans and show our lifestyle?
We had noticed that this kind of core group had started to grow. You know what, why don't we show what's happening with this band at this moment right now?
That showed off our fans, that showed off our energy on stage, that showed everything that we were truly about.
Those were some good testing grounds for us.
We felt like that song could transcend that record, so we gave it a lot of special love and care.
So we filmed it, but we'd never really filmed a real video at that point.
That was the one and only time I think we played Unholy Confessions more than once in a set.
I think we actually did 2 takes. We played the fucking, that's right, we played the fucking song twice. That's why I was pissed.
Because we were shooting the video and they're like, do you guys think you could play the song more than once?
We had to do that performance a few times, and one was before anybody got there. And we hadn't rocked out in front of nobody in any video, you know, at that point yet, especially when you're on stage and it's supposed to be live, but there's no kids there yet.
At first we're like, that seems weird. We're not going to jeopardize the show for the video. Then we talked about it and we're like, okay, well, we'll let the crowd know the reason why we're doing it.
I have just been informed by the video director that he would like to shoot Unholy Confessions one more time. So if you want to get in this fucking video, show us what the fuck you guys got. This one is Unholy Confessions for the second and last time.
But it felt fucked up to have to do takes at a live show.
We're going to play the song again. But we're doing it so they get extra shots for the video and stuff, and they loved it. They went even crazier the second time we played it as soon as they knew that there was going to be a video and everything like that. So that was really cool.
The one thing about these guys is everyone always steps up to the plate when things need to be good or need to be right. And that was one of the first examples of like, okay, we got to nail this show. We got to, you know, make sure the energy's there, and the video is a testament to that.
Ultimately, it's the video that ended up getting played on MTV2 Headbangers Ball, which is huge for us. I mean, that's people started finding out about us.
There was a lot of kids you'd see out in the crowd with their death bats on their backs or whatever, and they would be pointing at them, trying to get your attention. You'd see them down there and give them a wave, you know, that's cool. It was very exciting, you know, to see someone that appreciative or that into what you're doing artistically, musically. It's just very rewarding. We just couldn't be happier. We had the best fans from day one.
Waking the Fallen to me is a record that sounds 10 years old. But I like that, you know, there's a lot of older records that people try to mess with and remix and master, and I think it ruins them. I think the record is what it is, and it's, you know, as big as it is because of all the different flavors and all the different, you know, nuances of it.
Now that we're older and have written a lot more versatile songs, from groove-oriented to songs like A Little Piece of Heaven that are all over the place, to more rock-driven, like backcountry, and we're able to go back to playing songs from Waking the Fallen, just about anything on that album, and fans are still really excited to hear them. It's funny because a song like Eternal Rest is still fast as fuck.
We just brought back Eternal Rest into the set for these last South American dates, and it's funny because when you play them now, maybe the first night was a little nerve-wracking, but once we got the mix right, it was just so much fun to play. It had this punk rock element to it, and it's one of the more metal songs on that record, but it feels more bare bones and stripped, but aggro, and you kind of felt like how it felt to write a song like that, and to play it was just fun. It was just so much fun.
You know, as we've grown and matured, we've learned that a lot of times less is more. Those songs were even crazier on the demos before, believe it or not.
We thought at the time they were trying to harness all of our abilities, but really it was still pretty wild and out there.
We really just wanted to write eclectic, adventurous, crazy songs.
We play Unholy Confessions every show, and it's always a crowd favorite.
It's kind of crazy because, you know, this year coming up we're going to be headlining Donington, which is a huge festival in England, and you know, it's crazy to me to think that we're going to be playing some songs from Waking the Fallen. The songs have come so far, you know, going from being unsigned to all of a sudden playing 3 or 4 songs on the biggest stage in the world. It's kind of a crazy thing to think about.
We were just young kids out of our minds writing music that we loved in hopes that somebody would come see our band someday.
I definitely knew that there was a chemistry between Avenged and their fans that was unlike any other band I'd seen, really. They felt like we were doing something really special. I mean, we really did too, to be honest.
And I think that's another reason why our fan base has been so loyal and so great throughout the years, is I think that they recognize that. And flash forward to now, again, you know, there's those same fans out there. They've grown with us as we've grown as a band, making new songs and new albums and everything like that. The shows have gotten bigger. There's more people, but there's still Avenged Sevenfold fans. They still very much have that mentality that they did at Waking the Fallen.
It really feels like Waking is where it all began. I think Sounding Seven Trumpet was fun and a great starting point, but it was almost like our rehearsal album because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have our lineup solidified. When I listened to Hail to the King or Nightmare, that's where it all began. And it's cool to see that we're staying true to everything we set out to do.
We just had such a great support team and people that came to the table and really gave us a shot.
You know, there's a lot of luck involved when you look at like meeting Larry and meeting Ryan, our booking agent, and meeting Mudrock and Fred, and them even willing to do the record. It just wouldn't be the same without that group of people, you know, doing this thing. You know, Larry always keeping the record labels off our back. Lewis at Hopeless letting us do our thing, you know, not getting on our case about anything. And from early on we learned, just be you and just do your thing and do whatever you want. That's a testament to all those guys. It set us up for a really good future.
We had no idea of what we were getting ourselves into at the time, but it inspired just fun, amazing, memorable moments.
I'm proud of the guys and I'm proud of that record because of that those songs have stood the test of time.